trying to just narrow that down to what's the real summary. You know, if you had to explain to somebody in 30 seconds what's going on here, to just do that in text so they can read it, makes it so much more approachable and easy to get started. And they even give them clues to where they should go next. You know, take a look at this. You know, and breaking up the bottom section into 3 parts to show 3 different aspects is great. I mean, that's not something that we've done, and so that we haven't even really been thinking that way. That's one of the things that makes stuff like this valuable, is that you get these different perspectives, and just simple things like having, hey, just write it. Just tell them if you were standing there with them, just write that down. It's such a great perspective to have. That's really cool. I'm curious, having the data filters on the right versus the left, is there a rhyme or reason?
Well, people read right to left, so if you want them to get this first glance without even doing anything, it's like you'll have that text and you'll have the pictures, and then this part is where you go for more information.
Got it.
I didn't think about that. That's true. That's really smart.
Great.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I really like this idea of highlighting things in the map, because if you're a user, you don't really know where to start, and I think the worst thing everybody would do would just click on everywhere and look at it, and that's a waste of time.
There is a feature on there where we can turn those on. I didn't want to show every feature in the software because it's not really a software demo. I just wanted to get to the one thing. But there is a thing where you can turn on circles like that for the different levels of concentration.
Oh, okay.
And a depth slider so you can narrow it down to what depth you're talking about. But having that, and we generally don't have that turned on when people come right to it, so that they don't have to figure out what one more thing is on the screen that's already pre-packed. But maybe that's informative enough that we should include it on there right from the get-go.
Cool. Great. Okay. So
So we started this by asking ourselves, kind of putting on the engineering hats and saying, all right, what are the most important pieces here? The major questions that we want answered. In looking at the visual itself, definitely agree with the last group. I think our overall concern is that there's so much information packed into the visual that it's very hard to unpack kind of what the major takeaways should be from this, from all this data. And so it's a very simple, like, flow chart. Major question that they're trying to answer: are you in compliance? Yes, wonderful. If not, then seeing kind of where are we out of compliance. Secondary to that, then what is the trend? So where are they? Where's it flowing? Are you increasing in concentration of these, or are you decreasing? After that, what are the specific levels and of which contaminants? And then down at the bottom, ultimately baking in an element of recommendation. So, these contaminants can be remediated using these methods, and being a bit prescriptive in what the solution should be to get rid of these contaminants. And then with that, I will hand it off to...
Yeah, so part of what our concept was being very mission-centric. Why are you doing this study? What are your clients going to do with this information? And there's so many variables. There were 12 different contaminants that's almost impossible for anybody to sit down and look at 12 different graphs of contaminants and really figure out what's going on. So what we proposed was using 2 different indices. One would be a compliance-based index. So for each of those 12 contaminants, you're either in compliance or you're out of compliance, but you crunch that into one index. So either you're in compliance for everything, or at least one is out of compliance. And then, charting that compliance on a 2D basis as a map, because when you're drilling wells, you're not doing directional drilling or anything fancy. You need to know where at the surface to go down, and then you could map down in depth if you needed to figure out the distance of your well. The second index has more to do with when you're doing environmental remediation. So, and that would be some type of linear combination of those 12 contaminants and their density. And we would leave that to a subject matter expert to determine the best way to do that. You could add them up like a straight linear combination. You could weigh them based on, I don't know, like liability. Or you could let the data speak for itself and use principal components analysis, and you could even do just one of your principal components. You could do 2. Those components could show you things like the age. It could show you the toxicity. I'm not really sure because, you know, that's up to you. But it's an idea that we're throwing out there. Nope, I'm still up on the map. And then when you have that index, displaying that index as the map, as like a density. So if you can get it down, crunch those 12 variables down into one variable that has all those different parts in it, you can show that density over time and space. And we proposed having like a play button so that you could show how this map changes over time. So here we would say this is an area of higher density of all the contaminants, hypothetically. And if you could see that moving over time, this would inform your future sampling because you would know, well, this is my last well now, but I need to drill a new well out here to figure out what's going on. And it will help you figure out some of those other flows. And I think that our other features that were down there.
That's my cue.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
camera 2, sir. Camera
Yeah,
2.
I think we're pretty typical of some of the other groups.
Yeah, just so you've got the different sample sites,
Something else.
clicking on them,
No, that
and then
was it.
understanding kind of what the various concentrations of the various components are at different depths. And we started mocking up, if we can slide this way, just kind of a very basic like starting point for kind of what the major data points should be. Status, I think very similar to the last group of compliance or not, what the major points are there, and then this map with the various indices, number of different filters to be able to affect the map, and then a drill down area depending on what the selection's been made up top.
Cool. So you had the text status idea too, put that at the top.
Yep. Just as like a, basic kind of what's going on,
Yeah.
how we doing.
Yeah, which should be mostly for those that are above the threshold,
Right.
those that are not.
We're also thinking some sort of indication on the sampling sites as to like a flashing red light for those that are problem areas potentially, to kind of flag the attention of.
Yeah, that's
users.
true. That's another dimension that we're not really using is some kind of animation.
There's too much hydrogen dioxide in this well.
Really?
Yeah.
Great. Round of applause.